And today is not simply about sports journalism because I am joined by two gentlemen I respect too much. So today we are hoping we can create the necessary systems that, as always, will help with this kind of conversation. More specifically, it's about whether the stories we are telling are protecting young athletes or placing additional weight on already burdened shoulders. So, by distinguished guests, colleagues from the media fraternity, safeguarding practitioners, development partners, sports leaders, and young advocates joining us from across Africa and beyond. I want to say it's a good afternoon from where I am in Nairobi. Good morning from if you're joining us from anywhere across the world, or I hope you're having a good day where you are. So, on behalf of the Youth Initiative Development Program in partnership with Triple I Foundation, I want to warmly welcome you to this strategic pre-summit dialogue. Today's discussion, again, is not simply about sports journalism, but the people who, it's about the power in which we hold, the power of narrative to shape identity, the power of stories to influence how we help people understand success, failure, masculinity, as you put it, Collins. It's an entirely male field today, but we will look at those, the vulnerability the athletes pay, and even the resilience they have to endure in where they are. Across our continent, millions of young athletes consume sports content daily, be it on the main media, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagrams, and the like. Yet, while we celebrate goals scored or medals won and even records broken, we often remain silent about the invisible injuries that many young athletes carry, be it burnout, anxiety, depression, isolation, gender-based violence, which might be considered mostly on the women's side, but the men as well face it. There's identity lost after sports for those who have to stop playing at an early onset. So this roundtable challenges us to ask fundamental questions. Can sports media become more than a mirror of performance? Can it become a protective shield for human dignity and mental well-being? Today, we'll explore how journalists can move from the reactive storytelling to proactive safeguarding through what we are calling the narrative shield. So, according
we have lost you, Boniface. You're on mute.
this means that the story told by journalists, podcasters, and digital content creators increasingly shape how young people interpret pressure, failure, recovery, and even masculinity. So this means that stories told by journalists, broadcasters increasingly shape how young people interpret pressure, failure, recovery. So today I have the pleasure to be joined by these two gentlemen, and I want to just open the floor for them to be able to introduce themselves, then we can carry out with the conversation. So Mike and William, at no particular point, I would want to ask you to introduce yourself, then we can carry on. Do we have Mike?
Yes, I'm right here.
Yes,
I hope
thank
you can
you.
see me.
I think I've had the pleasure of working with Mike quite a bit, and we've shared on a lot. So when this opportunity arose, he was more than willing. In fact, quote unquote, he said, Bonnie, this is something that we have already been doing for quite a bit. And yes, Mike is doing a lot within this space. So Mike, maybe just an introduction and maybe set the tone for us.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, good evening from wherever you're listening. As introduced, my name is Mulure Mike, and I am the founder of B Plus Sports, Pan-African sports marketing and communication company. Amongst very many other things that we do in the sports ecosystem, I'm also the creator of B Plus Sports, which currently I would say arguably is the largest basketball database in Kenya, because we've combined basketball data from all levels of play, from the grassroots to high school through to the elite. And when we speak about the issues that we're talking about here about mental wellness, I can't help but pull out, first of all, from the sporting ecosystem to ask myself, why does it matter for us to talk about the mental well-being of athletes? Why? How do we find ourselves having this conversation? And amongst many other things, athletes are not isolated from the rest of us. They are part of the society. The demands and pressure of life that we have upon each and every individual, especially at an economically active period of their lives, when they finish college and university, and now you're actively part of an economic dependence, if I can use that for lack of a better term. We are expecting results. We are expecting you first and foremost. And I saw a statement somewhere within that question where the athlete is expected to feed the family or something. And it's not unique to the athletes. It's a demand of the young people, especially. And I like the conversation where we started it, where you're talking about mental health and how we found ourselves here. There is a lot of pressure on the boy child. There is a lot of pressure, especially on provision for the boy child. And this does not spare any sector of society, and sports is not different either. The challenge that we have in the sporting ecosystem is that sports, by its nature, is a competitive sport. It's a competitive activity where it's who gets there first, it's who got the most points, it's who is able to do it best, it's who has broken the records, it's who has stayed undefeated for longer. In its nature itself, sports is pressure. And notwithstanding the other socio-economic, environmental challenges that the athlete faces with the demand from the environment that surrounds them, by the nature of their activity, there is already enough pressure. Youth struggle through very many things. Injuries are prone to derail your growth or your progress. The competition, and right now with the global market, everyone is reading and seeing articles from all over the world, and this puts so much pressure on the mind of each and every athlete from whichever form of sports that you play. And when we talk about media is just a reflection of who we are as a people. And I wouldn't want to single out the media and say media has failed here and media has failed there. The media is just a reflection of how we behave and how we operate. And I want to start this conversation by maybe just asking us one question. I don't know if I'm supposed to introduce myself or I can just go quickly through my points. I wouldn't.
At some point, definitely you'll introduce yourself, Mike. So yeah, you know how you do your power introduction.
Yeah, so when this conversation was asked, and I saw a stats that says 8 out of every 10 suicide cases in Kenya is male, and I asked myself, are they just sports people, or they are generally people who are undergoing through certain mental crisis? It's in the survivalist culture, and I like how you guys put it, that there is a survivalist culture where day in, day out, people, both male and female, are just reeling to survive. You're just looking forward to sorting out your next bill. And it's even worse if there is a health bill that is slapped on your face, because now it throws a lot of people in disarray. And a lot of people say that most of people, especially in Kenya and in Africa, you're just one medical bill away from poverty. And when you think about that, and you imagine now your form of income is sports, which has its own fair share of pressure on its own. And we put pressure on the journalists to say, how do Kenyan journalists stop being reactive and become proactive? Kenyan journalists and journalists across the world are not reactive. By the nature of their trade, you report once something has happened. You report once a goal has been scored. That is what makes the sports content. The nature of sports content is in the emotional burden that athletes and teams and fans go through in the process of whichever sport you're reporting. So in its nature, the nature of that trade in itself is the problem in its own. So how do we help ourselves look at it? It's in depth. And I think for me, from where I stand and what we've been trying to push is to journey with the athletes and see that these athletes are not just objects of success and competition, but they are human beings who have families, who have children, who have mothers and fathers, and have people who they talk to, and they are emotional beings themselves. And I feel like the more we allow our media houses and our reporters into those vulnerable parts of our locker rooms and on our planning sessions, and when the coach is mad and we report on the human elements of sports, then people will start to understand that they are not just result beings, but they are human beings who compete, and they can make it, they cannot make it. And when you bring in the economic element to it, a lot of people in Africa unemployment is the biggest challenge facing young people in Kenya today. There are two opportunities that most young people have in Kenya today. It's in the creative economy and in the sports. All this put a serious burden on whoever is seeking to find any sort of an income generating activity, that beyond yourself, there is a family, there is a communal way of life that I would say as Africans and as a people, we've had since time immemorial. Whenever you get a job, and look at most of the people who come, I'm not a city boy, I came to Nairobi. And when you come to Nairobi, for example, you're expected to live with a relative. That relative is supposed to accommodate you, whether they wanted it or not. And when you think about that, it means that you owe your community a responsibility, or you owe a certain duty of care to the people surrounding you. And the incomes are the most affected component in any person who is seeking to make a living, whether in the city or even in the rural areas. And now when you add that to the pressure that comes with sports, the competition, and then now Africa, to be honest, is disadvantaged in so many ways when you're looking at even the sporting ecosystem in itself. And you will not talk about the governance structures that we have, the leadership in our sporting ecosystem. When you're talking about the opportunities that are there in the sporting ecosystem, the infrastructure, the facilities that are available for our athletes to compete. Like, there are so many things that has already beaten down the athlete before they can start to compete. So when we're thinking about it, and it's not about just demonizing the journalist and say, why are you focusing on the reactive nature of sports? But it's inviting them into a space of saying, let us look at this issue that has confronted us, and let us look at it in an open manner. Let us value the vulnerability of our artists, but also the teams and the athletes themselves. It is also a two-edged sword. They also have to let the athletes to their vulnerable spaces, that the media houses can and the journalists can also just journey with them and also just understand what they go through wherever they feel vulnerable or wherever they are going through a difficult phase of their lives. Because it's in the reporting of such things that people will share that duty of care. And when I look at this topic, I feel like it's a conversation not only for the journalist, but for us as a community or as a society in general, to look at the mental health issues that are surrounding us in whichever sector of society and say, how do we support each other? How do we create a bond amongst us as a people that help us just owe the other person a slight duty of care to say that I would have been so harsh on how you lost, but because of a story that was told and because of what I saw in the back room, and I saw how these people train, and I saw the struggles that they had, I am less harsh on my criticism of such and such athletes. So as I say, my name is Mulure Mike, and Bonnie had said I'll introduce myself at some point. I am in sports marketing and communication. And one of the biggest gaps we have in Kenya and in Africa is sports data. The nature of how we've been reporting, we have focused on the results, and that is what has been made available. That is the culture we've built, that we focus on the results. Team A scored, Team B lost, Team C did this and did that. It is because we've not invested time and resources in collecting data that can help us look at sports beyond the results. So before we look at the journalists and say, why are you focusing on results? We have to introspect and ask ourselves, have we collected enough data that can allow us to tell more stories beyond the results? And that is the question that I want to challenge us to do here today. And in every conversation that each and every one of us who is going to be having beyond this place, ask yourself, in whichever form of sport that you play in, is there a system? Is there a structure that collects data that even you, wherever you're seated, you can look at the team you love and say, I can actually look at the athlete's performance and I can already see who is doing well and who is not doing well based on the data collected, because that helps us to care. When you see a certain athlete's numbers are not adding up, or certain things, he used to do this, and it allows us to internalize and analyze more and want to understand more. Why is Boniface, who's a good hockey player, has been scoring? He was the top scorer last season. This year, he's only scored 3 goals. What has happened? The fact that we have something to compare improves the quality of the conversation that we have. And that is what we have to advocate for as people, because it is not enough for us to say, let the journalists stop being reactive. The journalists will have to tell that story anyway. And the journalists will use the resources that are available for them to tell the stories. But it is the duty, the collective duty of each and every one of us to ensure that we build enough resources, we collect enough information that will help even the journalists tell stories even more. To the media houses, the digital disruption has really disrupted the media houses. And to be honest, even the media houses are in that survivalist culture. People are just trying to make ends meet, and people are rushing to be the person who broke the news because you want clicks. You want to build those clickbaits. I want to be the first person to have broken that news. There is a lot of distortion of information when that happens, because people don't care to dig deeper, to research further, to interrogate further, to be able to give a credible and a more rounded story, because we are in a rush to be the first person to break the news. We are in a rush to be the first person to have shared that story. And look at it, even how it has really taken away the duty of care in each and every one of us. People have had an accident in certain places. An athlete has broken a leg, but you're quick to record this because you want to post it on your social media. You want to post this. You want people to like this because you're the first person to break it. But do you care about that athlete who's broken the leg? Do we understand whether we have right mechanism put in place that is going to help that athlete even recover? So there are a lot of questions that when we look at, it exonerates the journalist in a little bit, in a particular way, but pulls all of us, including the journalists, including the presidents and the leadership of these federations, including the ministries, the government, and all the relevant authorities that are supposed to help young people tap into sports as a means of income generation. So I can go on and on and on because I have a lot of things I'm very angry about when I look at how we've been doing sports, and yet we are such a young content.
Already the question I'm having, Mike, then how do we balance that virality of us having to post fast, even if it's an injury, with the artist well-being, ensuring however we put that content is not going to affect it? I know William is already with us, but how do we balance this as creators or journalists to ensure the virality doesn't affect the artist's well-being?
Very good question. There is strength in numbers. People become okay with I'm almost certain to say that we've gotten to a place where in Africa or in Kenya, people are almost going to become okay with corruption. Is corruption a good thing? No. But because it is very rampant in everything, every place you turn, in fact, it has gotten to a place where you're almost the person who is behind if you're not corrupt. In fact, people are even more shocked if you're not corrupt than if you're corrupt. They're almost expecting. And that is the culture that we've built. The same way, if we can populate our platforms and our systems with well-researched stories, people want well-researched stories. And when we do it over time, and I can tell you for a fact, we've invested our time in the quality of storytelling. And if you look at some of the stories we've done, both in basketball, we've been covering boxing, we've been covering rugby, we've not focused on viral, we've not focused on numbers, we've focused on quality. And it has put us in spaces where we are having very, very good conversations. And even me being here and being invited into this space is because somebody has seen what I've done somewhere. It's because somebody has seen how we've carried ourselves in a particular ecosystem. And this is what we have to make normal. I'm not saying that we are the best and we are doing it the right way, but we've tried in our own way to beat that pressure to be the first person to break the news, to be the first person. There is a lot of people who are already doing that. But can I go a step further to explain that phenomenon? Can I do slightly more research to tell a different side of that story that is factual, that perhaps the people who are rushing to break the news ignored? And if that becomes a culture, if that becomes a normal thing, trust you me, even those ones who rush to break news will start realizing that no, even if I want to break news, I have to research further. I have to look at it in depth because it has become a culture. Remember, each and every one of us is shaped by the culture around us. We are not individual beings. We are not islands, but we are a collection of all the experiences that we have, both present and past, that shape how we reason and shape how we look at the society around us.
Thank you so much, Mike. And we will have more time to delve more into that. But we are not here alone. We also have Njuguna William with us. So at this point, I would just want to open the platform for him just to give us his opening remarks. Then we can see how we balance the conversation to ensure we are within the next 1 hour, 20 minutes that has been assigned. So William, welcome. As I'm waiting for Mr. Njuguna to come on board, I also just want to let in those who are with us joining the conversation from across the board. The chat room is open, so you can always shoot a question to Mike, William, or even myself, or even give a comment on any of the sentiments that we are going to be giving out. Collins and the YIDP team is going to be on the lookout to ensure that we can carry on with involving everyone so that this conversation is not closed but open. Because again, Mike has just made it open to us that this is a community effort if ever we want to change this narrative way past what the journalists are going to be putting out there. So again, William, if you are with us, please, your opening remarks.
It seems William is having some technical problem because we can't hear him and his mic is on.
All right, so we will get back to William. So Mike, I want to come back to you. Have you ever deliberately chosen not to publish a story because the human cost outweighs the traffic potential? And how did that play out? Or even if you can point out such a situation?
Pardon, have I ever done what? Kindly ask the question again.
I know you are moving away from the virality of telling the stories. In a situation where you had such a story where making it viral would have been way much more easier, and you chose the human element out of it. How did it cost, or how did that situation play out?
To be honest, I think, to be honest, by nature of how I do my work, I don't think I've ever felt any pressure to do viral content. To be honest, I've never felt pressure to do something just because I'm expecting eyeballs. I focus on stories because I feel like I owe people a duty of care to do stories that can create an impact in whichever sector of society that I'm choosing to do a story. So my approach to story has never always been speed. It has always been depth. Can I speak to one more person? Can I have an opportunity to speak to another one more person, to be able to understand better, to be able to give a better context? Because I feel like in the modern world where everything is fast paced and everybody is moving, people want things on the go. There is still a chance for people to look for in-depth insights in several matters. For example, last evening I was working on an article that I'm going to publish today about the history of World Cup, and there is a part that was missing, that I was not understanding the 1966 boycott. If you look at the history of Africans' participation in the World Cup, Africa boycotted the 1966 World Cup that was in England. So there are certain components of that story that I was not able to nail yesterday. And I didn't publish that story yesterday because the person I wanted to talk to, who was helping me understand that part, because it was more political. It was led by Kwame Nkrumah and people from Ghana. And I needed to understand the political aspect of why did they boycott that World Cup. I would have just chosen to ignore that part and publish that story, because the World Cup is starting today, and everybody is trying left, right, and center to do something and to be part of the narrative of the World Cup. To be honest, I didn't feel the rush, because I feel like that story, it is going to be a different story from some of the stories you've read, because I've journeyed with Africa from 1934, where Egypt started as the only country to play, to 2022, where Morocco reached the highest level of the World Cup. And this World Cup that we are having starting today also is a milestone, because Africa has the highest representation, 10 teams that are participating in the World Cup for the first time in the history of World Cup from Africa. I feel like that story, even if it came out tomorrow, it will still be a very relevant story because of the angle that I've chosen to tell that story. Even next year, even after the World Cup, even during the final, I'm not under any particular pressure to release this story today because the World Cup is starting today. So I tend to push myself towards that way of telling stories, in a way that I'm able to go for depth, so that even if it's delayed by a day or two, the consumer will really appreciate the depth of knowledge that comes with that story. So I wouldn't really think top of my head of any circumstance or situation where I found myself having to push myself to break a story or something like that. There are projects I've worked. I feel like the newsroom kind of reporting is very different, because newsroom is very, today you've been sent on the ground, you're supposed to do a report, and you're supposed to compile your report by a certain period of time, and you're supposed to do, there is that person whose day-to-day work is time-based, it's speed-based, is you're supposed to have this story on air by 7 p.m. I don't know what it takes to do that. I've never done that sort of reporting where I have to go out with a camera today and I have to compile a story and I have to have it on air today. That's why I've chosen to do features most of the time. Even in the media houses where I've worked, I've always gone the feature way, so that I'm able to have enough time to research and do this story. I'm in the social media ecosystem where there is still a bit of story that you can do to just create, how do I call it, a teaser. I can tease a story. For example, if I'm covering a certain story and I know it will take me a couple of days before it is out. At the moment where people are doing, I always do a teaser. For example, what I do with most of the boxing coverage that I do, I know everybody is going to share the video of this fight. This is what happened. But for me, I want to get an in-depth interview with a boxer. I want to understand what the journey they had through the ring, and especially sometimes I have very specific questions in in certain rounds of the ring, that if I choose to go quickly to just post it because I've seen so and so have won this boxing match, it will not add up for the story. So I go both ways, where I'll record something slightly short, like a teaser where this person is reacting maybe from the fight that they had, but then now tell people that look out for the longer story, or look out for this, and then now I find how I can hook it with the longer viral one. But I don't think there is any time we've done a teaser and that's it. That was the story. It has ended there. Now we move on to the next one.
So, Mike, which team are you supporting at the World Cup? And back to serious matters, how do we make such kind of stories you're telling commercially valuable?
To be honest, I'm supporting all the teams from Africa, but I'm a Ghana supporter. I love Ghana. I'm going with Team Black Star. I don't know. We don't have a very strong team. I don't know how far we will go, but I still go to the World Cup with Ghana. I like Senegal a lot. They are my African rival. I journeyed with them through the African Cup of Nations. They are the other team I admire from afar. But if Ghana and Senegal are playing, Ghana any day. I wish Kenya was somewhere there, but unfortunately not. For European countries, I'm with Team Portugal. I'm hoping Portugal will clinch the World Cup so that Cristiano can just lift it and retire. And we say football happened between Messi and Ronaldo. Thank you.
Now to the question which I was having, the kind of stories which are human-centered are not considered so much commercially valuable. So how can we go about ensuring that there is value in such kind of stories, so that we are not always rushing to do clickbait kind of reporting or feature creation?
I would argue that my lungs out. I will argue with my liver and my spleen. Because I think just by the nature of the work that I do, I can argue that to say it depends with which perspective you're looking at it. There is a space for every story, and just encourage journalists to do in-depth research, to do quality stories. I don't think the market really is not. Human beings are story oriented by nature. Look at people watch those Nigerian films for hours and still complain of how poorly they've been shot. I don't know what this I don't like how this person, I don't know, this thing is witchcraft. But if you notice, people stay true to the story. People want that human connection. People want that human touch. And I want to challenge our journalists, before you say that people don't like human interest kind of stories, try it. Let us speak from a point of research where you can say, I've done 10 stories and I've noticed the 5 stories that I did that are human interest have not received any sort of support, or have not received any feedback, as opposed to these rushed stories. And I can argue and say that assumption is really not correct, because most of the stories that I've done I try as much as possible to do human interest stories, human-centered stories, and that is what has gotten me several nominations and even awards in the journalism ecosystem. I don't think there is anyone who... I'm yet to see a category for breaking news. Maybe if Media Council of Kenya will introduce that. But if there will be any category for breaking news, I don't know how they will categorize it and reward somebody for being the first person to break the news. Will it be because of the magnitude of the thing you're reporting? Will it be how fast you broke the news? Will it be the quality of analysis that was there in your station when you broke the news? There is no depth in analysis of somebody who's broken news. Most of the time, breaking news is accidents. It's something negative that has happened, an accident that has happened. Some dormitory has gotten burnt. A certain prominent person has passed on. There is no storytelling narrative in breaking the news. But I feel like sometimes when you go into the depths of understanding why people react in a particular way, why they behave in a particular way, it gives us an opportunity to understand further and be able to tell their stories. Guys, be careful. I talk a lot, especially on things that I'm passionate about. I might end up talking for the entire time. So feel free to stop me at any given point. But I'll be happy to share from both experience and perspective of what I do, and majorly on sports marketing and communication. So I feel like we have to try it, Bonfas. We have to try it. You have to test it to say, out of my 10 stories, 5 which were human interest did not get very good feedback. And I will dare you to say it. Ask anybody who is doing human interest stories. Ask any podcaster who has had people come to their podcast to tell their stories. They will tell you those are the shows that people watch the most.
Thank you so much, Mike, for that. Again, you always hear the passion when you are talking about some of these topics. So I'm glad we have this opportunity or this platform for us to even just question or even poke holes more into it. Did we manage to have Mr. William on board? Because I would love definitely for him to give us his introduction at this particular point. While we are waiting for that confirmation, I want to say this discussion is not only for myself, Mike, or YIDP. We have a couple of members already joining in this conversation, so feel free to throw your question in the chat box, raise a hand, and the team is definitely going to make us aware so that we can able to ensure you can also contribute to your own sentiments or just thoughts on this topic. Colleagues, do we have Mr. William on board?
Yeah, William is here, but I can't hear his voice. His mic is on.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Fantastic. Yes, we
Yeah.
can hear you, William.
Sorry for coming in late. Shida ya mitambo na hitilafu hapa na pale. Yes, my name is William Juguna. I write for the Star newspaper, and I also have a radio show, sports show, on Saturdays on Kiss 100 and Classic 105. Yeah, and I'm very glad to be here. I've had some very good input from Mike about data and so many things about sports. And I think for me, from where I come from, and I think I'll tend to agree with him, one of the biggest challenges we face in this country, and now let me put on my rugby hat, because rugby is my sport. It's a sport that I've covered for the last 20 to 25 years. And of course, disappointed that Kenya did not make it to the core team this year after we lost in Bordeaux last week. One of the things which we lack in this country, especially for team sports, forget about athletics. Athletics, I think, as a country, is an individual sport, and I think most of our athletes train very well and they plan their races accordingly with their managers and agents. One of the biggest challenges we have in team sports in this country, and it's not only rugby related, even when you look at football, basketball, and volleyball, is lack of structures. When I mean structures, if you look at and now that we're talking about the World Cup and football, if you look at the European teams and South American teams, most of these teams, most of these players who are playing at the World Cup have started playing football or rugby or volleyball or basketball from a very young age. I'm talking about age 6, age 7, age 8. One of the biggest challenges we have with our team sports is that most of our players start our sports very late in the day. At age 14, age 15, age 16 is when you look at the basics. So that by the time that you find a player from South Africa or New Zealand or Australia or France or England, by the time you're meeting them at an international level, the basic skill set is so refined, it's been repeated over 10 years that they're very comfortable with it. We seem to we seem to start our sports at a very late age. And I think going forward as a country, we have to be very intentional in how we're going to do our sporting structure and talent identification going forward. And until that is done, if you ask me, especially for the team sports, we are always going to come up short whenever we meet the powerhouses and the big boys, especially at international level. If that is not rectified, we're going to have let me not say one season wonders. You will find a group of players who come through the ranks, who have grown together, who will do well for a particular period. I'll give you an example. The Kenya cricket team, which did very well in 2003 at the Cricket World Cup, which we hosted here at the Gymkhana. That team was together for give or take 6, 7, 8 years. But what has happened right now? Where are we in cricket? We are literally at the bottom of the barrel. We can't even beat even Uganda right now. We can't even beat teams like Nigeria, who back then we could even have played our Team C and Team D and destroyed them. But because that group of the Tikolos and the Odumbes were there, we never had a pathway or structures to ensure that when these guys retire, we can have a cohort or group of players who are going to come through and continue with the success of that generation of the Odumbes and the Tikolos. Rugby, at least, we are trying to an extent. But my biggest challenge is that we start our sports so late in the day, not late, but we don't start like what other countries are doing in the rest of the world. At age 5, age 6, age 7, they are seeing a cricket ball, they are seeing a rugby ball, they are seeing a soccer ball, they are seeing a hockey ball. And by the time now they go to play for the international teams, these guys are well-rounded and the skill set is so good. When you look at most of our national teams, especially football, volleyball, or basketball, the basic skill set has not been defined and refined because of through lack of repetitive action. Those are my opening remarks.
Thank you so much, William. And I agree definitely 100% on the age bit, because I am also a technical official for field hockey. And one of the issues recently, I think over the weekend, I was having with the president of the federation was even in umpiring, we have umpires starting as early as 14 and 16 years on. I had to wait until I was 25, 26 for me to start. So already you find they have over a 10-year gap. I already have a 10-year gap as to the South African who started officiating at 16. And this definitely is affecting on my overall performance in the sport, because while him at 20 is already being considered for continental tournaments, I'm still waiting for my first continental call-up within that field. But let's move on. As journalists, we've been considered more as scoreboard narrators. How can we be also a narrative shield to try and change this conversation? Still on you, William.
I think we lost
again, William.
We'll be back.
Okay, maybe if I can go back to Mike, which digital formats best humanize athlete stories? I know we have podcasts, you are big on features, we have long form interviews. Maybe from your creator background, how can all these formats be tailor-made to also ensure we have bits of sharing on the athlete's well-being, and how best can they be incorporated in this digital platform?
Am I back? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Mike.
So for me, each and every day, I try to be honest, I try to stay away from a conversation of platform and format. I focus on the intention and the depth. Why am I doing a story? Boniface is a hockey player, or Mike is a boxer. Why am I doing this story? Because I feel like our journalistic processes should answer most of these questions before we even pick a camera or a script to start writing. Because why are you telling the story? Why do you care? Why do you care? There is a question you've asked, you were asking William on scoreboard something. Just say that so that I can combine with this.
Oh, mine, the question was how we can move from scoreboard narrators to being the narrative shield for such kind of stories as journalists.
Yeah, there is nothing wrong with the scoreboard. And I wouldn't want us to demonize whoever is analyzing the scoreboard. The scoreboard is where the story starts. And I think we have to push our people to see the sport beyond the scoreboard. And that puts work on each and every one of us. And I feel like this puts to task more the leadership of the sports and sports management than it puts it on the journalist. I feel like for the journalist, we need to unlearn certain things and relearn certain things. We have to go back to the basics of saying, can we train? Because even us as B+, one of the things we are hoping we can do, and I hope this conversation can also help me find a partner or two that we can do this with. And it's not even about the cost, it's about just creating that awareness to the journalists on how to approach storytelling. Can we train our journalists afresh? And it's not to ignore the skill set that the universities have given, but I can tell you without fear of contradiction that at my organization, I have people who come for internship and attachments. And when you look at the gap between what somebody who got a distinction in class in a particular unit and what they are doing on the field, worlds apart. Our education does not match the needs of the market. And if you look at the journalism training, and I want to say this, and I want, it's part of something I'm still researching to ask myself, how modern is the journalism training in our colleges and university? Does it factor Instagram? Is there Instagram and TikTok somewhere in the curriculum of the current media ecosystem? So it means our training has already missed the bus. The starting point for most of our journalists is already not in touch with the market demands. And that is what has promoted the rise of, for lack of a better words, unprofessional storytellers. People who have the need to tell the story because there is no one else around them to tell the story. But can we equip our journalists to always tell the stories in a way that if you look at it, you will know that this is a professional? Is there a way we can harness the creativity of our journalists and bring them to a space of saying, can we relearn the current, can we learn and relearn certain new trends that will help us become relevant to the needs of the market at the present time? When you look at the culture of who we are as a people, how comes that our journalism has not transitioned from the journalism that was being done in the 90s? How comes that the syllabus that was being used to train my father or my uncle who did journalism in the 90s is the same syllabus that is being taught in school today? What has happened to that? There is a whole cultural shift in how people consume media. When that curriculum was being built, the key points of media, which we're talking about today, YouTube, we're talking about TikTok, we're talking about Spotify, we're talking about X, were not there. But these are the platforms where people go day to day to consume information. These are the places where even our media houses are now shifting to try to create. You'll see all our main media houses on TikTok, on Facebook, on what. But are we just present or we are influencing that space? Can somebody see Boniface's story and say, hey, this journalist knows what he's doing? What separates us from the unprofessional people who are just doing things for trends? Because even as journalists, we've not done service to ourselves to do stories that will show people the difference. You know that thing that they say sometimes, don't argue with a mad person. People might not notice the difference because we are doing the same thing that person is doing. And I feel like it's a challenge to each and every one of us, and even to the journalists, to go back to training. How can we train ourselves to look at the modern needs of the market? When we're talking about sports science has become the order of the day. People are playing sports with vests that measure up to the heart rate. People can even measure the power of a shot in a football match. I was seeing the soccer ball that is going to be used in this World Cup. It has a chip that now the referees will be able to just know an offside just right by examining the ball. How comes technology has advanced in sports and data collection mechanisms and science have evolved in sports, yet the reporting is still archaic? We must advance with technology. We must move with the world where the world is moving. Our strategies, our approach to storytelling must be in line and must conform to the modern demands of the market. William has spoken about rugby. Where in Kenya can you find rugby stats? If today you want to ask yourself, who is the top try scorer in Kenyan sevens? Where do you find that information? It is not there. Do you want to tell me that there is no one who needs that information? We must be responsive as storytellers. We must look at the gaps. Sadly enough, most of our people don't want to work hard. We want the low-hanging fruits. That's why the scoreboard has become our source of information. Why? Because just by looking at the scores, I can already compile a story. But can we embrace a practice where we can go further than the scoreboard? We can understand what happened in the match. We can also have something to say positive about this team that even still lost the match. That is what has developed Europe's sporting ecosystem, because they've allowed cameras into the locker rooms of their athletes. They've marketed right now, each and everyone. It is easier to find a Kenyan who will tell you the first 11 of the top 10 teams in the English Premier League, but cannot tell you which team finished fourth in the Kenyan Premier League. If you don't talk about Gor Mahia and AFC Leopards, who finished third? Somebody, even in this thing, must just go back and Google. Why? Because that information is readily available. It is not in our nature to go beyond this. That top, the topic, the title of the story. Do we go beyond the title? Do we go beyond the scoreboard? And it's not about the consumer. We blame the consumer a lot, yet it is the creator. The creator has not created enough depth for that person to interact with it. And once we start doing that, I want to believe, and we've done that in our platforms. Today, I was telling somebody that I have not checked we started a boxing coverage recently. We cover it on and off. And we chose a totally different approach in talking about covering boxing stories. I've not checked our inbox on Twitter, on TikTok for a very long time. I was there today. And trust you me, I've had a lot of people, and even people who are not even in Kenya, requesting if they can reuse some of our content. Why? And I keep asking myself, why do they ask if they can reuse that content? It's because there's something they've seen in it that they find worthy to be on their platform, that they want to share on their platform. And you see now that encourages us to say, there's something right you're doing. They might have not said what is the reason why they're asking for that content, but for them, and it's not one, it's not two people, it's a couple of people. And you realize that then there's somebody who needs this type of content. That encourages us as the people who are doing this thing to say that, guys, this type of content is needed. We were trying it out. We didn't know that this is something that people will appreciate. But clearly, it has indicated to us that people appreciate it. So that is going to be how we are going to say, this is how we cover boxing as B+ Sports. Okay. And that is going to form a trend. And I'm sure if it becomes very prominent, I will not be surprised to see other people will copy that as a format and as a style of doing their own content.
Okay, Mike, thank you on that. But before I can move on, you making it very clear there are things we still need to learn right now. If you are to design a journalistic code of care today on how we handle such kind of stories, what would be some of the key principles you want to get such kind of a training for journalists to ensure we are wholesome in how we are reporting?
Very good question. I don't know why you want me to market my curriculum. We've built actually a curriculum that we hope can help sane most of the journalism. And it's not to criticize what people already know. It's just to say, can we enhance certain components of our storytelling that are responsive to the current market needs? It is not enough to just say that I'm a journalist because I graduated. But are you responding to the current market needs? Are you feeding a certain constituency of people who rely on you as their point person in a particular sport? If you're reporting rugby, if you're reporting boxing, if you're reporting soccer, if you're reporting basketball, can people rely on you as their go-to person for that particular content? And people do that when they trust you. Why will they trust you? Because one, your research. You go beyond the headlines. We have to embrace a journalism that goes beyond the headlines. We have to think about the stories, and we have to think about the athletes. We have to report even on the athletes that did not succeed. And I remember we had a very long conversation with somebody in one of the outings that I went with Team Kenya last year, so that I hide the identity and I protect the source. I will not disclose the person, but we had a long argument because they were really focusing on gold. Has Kenya won gold? No, Kenya has not won gold. That was not a worthy story. And we really clashed because I kept telling them that we have to tell these stories, even when we've not made it to the final heat. Because we've focused so much on gold medals, especially in athletics, that if an athlete makes it to the final, it's not news enough. We forget that this athlete trained in Etain for 6 months, ran up and down in those hills of Etain, came to Nairobi for trials, made it to that international stage. They've gone through the stages and now they're in the final. They might have not won gold, but there is still a story to tell. That is what will help us appreciate our athletes. What does it feel like as an athlete when you wake up tomorrow morning and there is an article that has been written about you, despite not winning the gold medal, but somebody has appreciated the effort of you running to the final? Why do we just make it a good story only when an athlete wins a gold medal? Why do we make it very emotional when a team goes out? For example, and allow me to use this as an example. The Kenyan Deaf under-21 basketball team is in Poland. We've been beaten badly. In all the matches, we have been beaten badly. As a journalist, we must care. We must ask ourselves, why didn't we perform at that stage? It is not enough to just look at the results and say, we've been beaten fair and square in all these matches. We must interrogate. And I want to believe, and I want to put a challenge to most of us who are here and are reporting on a day-to-day basis, to go and understand, why did our deaf under-21 team perform that poorly at that stage? What went wrong? In a way that we are seeking to find a solution to that team in the next outing that they are going to go. Our reporting has always also demonized athletes, and that is why most of the athletes are not willing to give interviews, because when they don't win, we have demonized their performance. We have spoken so negatively about them. We have looked at even things that happened in the past and tried to justify why they did not perform well. I want to encourage our journalists to look at positivity even in the losses that we have. Remember, they say in Swahili, asiyekubali kushindwa si mshindani. It means we are open to even losing. What happens when we lose? Do we still report it the same way? Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Mike. I want to go back to William on just what are some of the policies that he is incorporating at the newsroom where he is to ensure we are telling more such kind of human-centered stories. So, William, to you, but I'm seeing Tobias also having his hand raised. So I'll come to you next, Tobias, after we listen in to William. So just hold on. William, to you, some of the policies you are using at the newsroom to ensure you tell human-centered stories as well as the scoreboard results. While I'm waiting for William, there are also a couple of questions which have been posted on the chat box. And we will definitely appreciate if you could always give your feedback on some of those, either on the chat box, on the WhatsApp platform that we have, or raise a hand as it is right now. And still not seeing William coming on board. So Tobias, you have a question or two from your end, either a question or a comment on the discussion we're having as we build up.
Yeah, so can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so my name is Tobias Otieno or Tobias Otieno, depending on where you're from. I'm a clinical and sports psychologist, currently based in Kigali, Rwanda. I work with a clinic called Solid Minds Counseling Clinic. And I'm happy to share that I was the team psychologist for the just concluded BAL champions, RSSB Tigers, if you guys were following. And what I can say from my experience, and I really relate with what Mike was sharing, there's a very big difference in terms of journalism from this end compared to what is back at home. And I think there's a huge gap that needs to be filled. And I think maybe the curriculum of Mike will do the journalist a lot of good, because back then I used to play rugby in Kenya and there was little to no coverage of the Kenya Cup championship games. But when it comes to the finals, all the media houses are there. And just as he said, there was no stats. There was no, you don't know which team won Kenya Cup last year or which, it's not only rugby, but in almost all the sports. So I think this is a good discussion that we're having here, and it also goes to show the level to which this country of Rwanda is taking sports, the seriousness it takes in terms of reporting, in terms of investing with psychologists in the team. This is some of the things that we should adopt, and we have the capacity to adopt back at our home, because we have huge potential from the athletes. And I think such conversation is what will make these things be possible. But all in all, I just want to congratulate you guys for this thing that you're doing. Hopefully, we'll collaborate with some of you guys here. I'd really like to have more conversation with Mike and the rest of some people in the group. And yeah, that's all I have to say for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Tobias. An area definitely we need to look into. So as it is on the question, if you have a question on media care, code of conduct, you can still raise your hand so that you can get that chance. Mike, you're asking why I needed to know about your curriculum. I think you need to do something to YIDP, and myself, you might just have gotten sessions to take these classes to Rwanda. I'm seeing members from Sierra Leone, Tanzania, Kenya, and currently Rwanda. Please represent your region, because this conversation is supposed to help us have an in-depth look at what is happening in the sports ecosystem in Africa. And here at the YIDP, we are co-authoring the future of African sports. So please be a part of this candid conversation. I want to go back to my round table and just to figure out, how does a narrative shield actually look like? I want to give this option to either Mike or William. I want to start with William. If you won't be able to respond, I'll come back to you, Mike. What does a narrative shield actually look like in storytelling or journalism reporting? Let's start with William, then move to Mike. Okay, then Mike, let's hear from you. Still having a challenge with having William on board. What does a narrative shield actually look like in storytelling or even journalistic reporting? Over to you, Mike.
To be honest, I've had that term today, narrative shield. Maybe just if you would expound further what it means,
Okay.
so that I can.
So, as journalists, we are the ones who decide, or most of the time, lead in the spreading of certain information going out there. So we are at a point where the scoreboard has been at the core of how we go about the reporting. So right now, we also want to offer some kind of a caution, some kind of a shield to ensure we are not only looking at the scoreboard. We want to go deeper. If you lost in a match, how did that go? A particular part of a boxing match, as you put it out there, most which will not be focused on. On your end, you're already doing this in ensuring that we look at personal emotions, how they go about an injury that might have occurred and have been missed. How can we become this shield so that it's not entirely only on the scoreboard or the medal or only the winners at the end of it, but we also ensure other elements or other aspects of an athlete's well-being is considered.
Yeah.
So how can we tell that story better?
I think just to start off from that point, you say, as a journalist, you're a professional. And I feel like you owe both your audience and your guests a duty of care. Whoever you're interviewing, be it an athlete, be it a coach, be it, you owe them a duty of care before you even think about what story you're reporting on. You also owe your audience a duty of care. You don't want to just sensationalize certain things for the sake of trending. Then you hear a month later, 2 months later, the athletes you interviewed, because of how you formatted your story, they've maybe committed suicide and things like that. Because there are things like that happen. I've seen how stressful it becomes to athletes if you are negatively making headlines, and it affects your performance. It affects how you relate. Does not mean that we can always lie that somebody is performing well when they're not. It is also there's also the doctrine of neutrality. You have to be impartial in your reporting, in a way that even if my brother is the one who has been beaten in kickboxing, and I'm the one who is, if I cannot report fairly on that story, I'd rather tell whoever I'm reporting to that no, I'm emotionally engaged in that story. My brother, I'm still mourning the loss, so that you report impartially. Impartiality is going to allow you to focus on the story and to focus on what promotes the sport. I want to believe that the reason why sports is a big business in Africa is because of how much people are brought together by sports. Think about us as a country. We are in a very serious political ecosystem. But I saw Gor Mahia fans at Archives. I won't talk about the other team. I saw Gor Mahia fans at Archives united by sports. And at that stage, nobody cared you are a Gor Mahia fan or an Arsenal fan from which tribe or that tribe. We remember that when we are talking about other things. So sports in its form itself has the capability of uniting us. And you and me as a journalist, we bear that responsibility to ensure that we are impartial in how we report, and we promote the spirit of togetherness, because that is what sports is all about. Secondly, it's in research. We have to encourage most of our journalists to research and do stories that cover beyond just the headlines. And I feel like if we embrace it as a culture, if 10 journalists are reporting in depth, even the ones who are reporting in just on the scoreboard will find a way to just improve their reporting. And I feel like sometimes change takes time, but one person has to start it, and that one person is you and I, who are on this meeting today. That we have to start something that is going to drive a certain thing in a particular way. Africa has been demonized in all manner of ways, not in sports, not in politics, not in business, not in. One of the things that has unified the world is sports. Right now, we are going to the World Cup. Today, no team has any points. All those 48 teams have an equal chance of winning the World Cup. It is not the same in all these other forms of sectors of society. Why don't we promote that sport? Why don't we show the business side of sports? I feel like one of the things that will also encourage most of our people to engage in sports is when we stop focusing on sports as a form of entertainment. I think that most of the time as journalists, we only focus on the entertainment value of sports, but we forget the business sides of sports. I'm happy that somebody like Tobias is here, who can say that when he was going to medical school, he didn't think, maybe he didn't ever see himself working in a sporting environment. He was hoping that one day he will be jabbing people in some clinic somewhere in Upper Hill or in some town somewhere, and I was going to be doing tests for people with malaria. But I found myself practicing what I studied in a sporting ecosystem. There are accountants who are working in a commercial ecosystem, in a sporting ecosystem. Do we ever focus on the business side or the cultural side of sports? And I think this will give us a wide range of things to report on that will take us off focusing on the scoreboard, because we will not always feel the pressure that I only have to report on how the matches went or how the scores went or who scored or what time. But we will go further to look at this. And now Tobias, just by that statement, I have picked an interest on him because he knows that our own Kenya Airways came to play for us, Nairobi City Thunder, but then they made it to BAL, and now they've performed extremely well, and we are really grateful for that. And I'm happy to hear, and to be honest, that somebody has made time to come to this conversation to say I am a clinician, and I'm a clinician in a team, and I'm sitting down with these people, and I'm interacting with them. But as journalists, do we ever think of people like Tobias as people who can give us sports content? When you're thinking about your stories, do you, in your wildest dream, think about Tobias as your potential interviewee in a sports story you're doing? Chances are, Tobias is likely to give you an angle in how they prepared that team to perform how that team performed, that maybe the athletes themselves cannot give you. And these are the opportunities that we are looking at to say that the shift of narrative from sports being entertainment to sports being a whole ecosystem is what is going to liberate us. And I was looking at a certain stat that was released by Super MultiChoice the other day, and it was saying that 54% of sports broadcast viewers in Africa are under 34 years of age. 54% of broadcast viewers in Africa are under 34 years of age. That means that we have a very youthful audience that is interested in sports. Does that influence how we tell our stories? Does that inform the platform? Because if I'm thinking about 54% of people, Africa has 1 billion plus people. If 54% are under 34 years, it means there is somebody on TikTok, is somebody on Instagram, is somebody on X. I'm starting to believe that most of them are not on Facebook. Facebook is for my generation and above. So it informs the format of the story that I'm going to tell. It informs the structure. It informs the duration and the length of the story that I'm going to tell, so that I remain effective as a journalist to speak to the relevant people and speaking in a relevant manner. When you look around, you realize that the world is coming to Africa in all sectors of society. The world is coming to Africa, not in mining, not in agriculture, not in all these things. Why are we afraid to say that the world is coming to Africa in sports also? NBA is here. NBA is building ecosystems in Kenya. This BAL that Tobias was participating in and they won the other day is an NBA product. Would you ask yourself sometimes, why is NBA in Africa? There is something they have seen. There is great potential they have seen. But do we interrogate some of these stories further as journalists to help us examine this ecosystem and look at even the potential of jobs that sports itself is able to create for us as a people? What other opportunities are there in the sporting ecosystem beyond the athletes that can allow us to open up that market? Then it becomes a day-to-day form. And then also there's a big chunk in data. Data is gold. And all these people are in Africa collecting data. It is sad that Africa is not collecting its own data in whichever sector of society. We have not embraced data storytelling. And that is something that is a very big gap, not only in sports, but also in other sectors of that allows us to collect our own data. We must be in charge. Our data has been used so badly. and especially the health data that has been collected in this country. But we must build structures and systems that will allow us to collect this data and use it for purposes of storytelling. I feel like our stories have more depth when they are backed by data, where they are backed by numbers, when they are backed by different people from different walks of life. And I'm happy that there is a clinician here who is interested in journalism. And this is something that I see as a point of convergence, that we have to bring all our sectors together to tell that story.
William, are you with us, and do you have anything that you'd want to contribute as we carry on? What other data metrics are we supposed to consider when telling such kind of sports stories? Yes, William? As I said, we are within the last 30 minutes of this conversation, and I'm seeing a bit of comments also within the chat box. And Osimbo Makuku is saying journalists need to have their facts when reporting on a subject for realistic expectation, i.e., what did we realistically expect from our under 21 day scheme? A good question there, Osimbo. Let me see. We are having others on the chat box. Charity Mwangi is saying this is great talk. So thank you very much, Mike, for your contribution. Tobias as well, and Colin for making possible this opportunity for us to have this discussion. Thank you, Charity. Moving on, we have Doreen Marcy saying, very nice discussion. She is a program associate from Amplify Health Development in Africa, Tanzania, where they focus on climate change impact, impacts that lead to rise of mental health emergencies. And then again, Sibo is back saying, Mike, your excellent insights appreciated. We need to develop empathy to view athletes as human beings and not trophy-winning machines. And we agree with you there 100% again, Simbo. Is William able to give his sentiment?
I think William's situation is
still having an issue with his.
yes,
so
we
Mike,
can open up.
William would really love to hear some of your insights within the newsroom. If not, I would want to carry on with Mike. And the future of sports journalists must be. This is a continuation. I don't know how you are going to frame it, Mike, but let me hear it from you. The future sports journalists must be. Continue the sentence.
The future sports journalists must be retrained.
Finish the sentence, yes.
The future sports journalists must be retrained. We have to look at the cultural shift and realize that as a journalist, you carry more responsibility beyond just having a story published, and you are the gate pass between whatever you're reporting and the world. The people will know what is happening in that ecosystem because you existed. And I think our journalists must also look at themselves in that depth, to see themselves not only as my mother tongue calls a journalist a very funny way. Their work is fuambo gekeyo, like you just gather and spread. Gather and spread, and I don't think that is the spirit of journalism that we want to talk about. We have to have that care, and also in this space where we are talking about mental health, I feel like mental health stories are very tricky stories to tell, and they are very delicate. There is a very delicate balance where you also, as the storyteller, must also have empathy with the person you're telling his story, and there are places where it is not even about the journalist, it's not about the story, it's about who we are as a people. And the best example today we can look at is the story of Denis Oliech. Denis Oliech remains one of my favorite all time. I didn't see Peter Dow. I hear people talk about Peter Dow. I saw Michael Koth. It's very little, but I would say Dennis Oliech is that striker we saw as growing up, and he represented Kenyan football. And those international opportunities came. He went to Qatar. He went all those. There is so much that has been said around Oliech, but today Oliech is not okay. But have we told Oliech's story from his perspective? I feel like we've told Oliech's story from every other perspective other than his. I would want to get to hear this story from his perspective. I'd want to hear him talk about those things. I've seen it is not enough for us to say that the government needs to do something. It stops being a government responsibility and becomes our collective responsibility. Because when Oliech is stressed and is feeling suicidal because of how people have bashed him online, it is not the government. It is us, the ordinary citizens, who look at him and say, you are stupid. You should have taken those millions from Qatar and become a Qatari citizen. And that is being told to somebody who sacrificed and said, I love my country so much that even money cannot make me stop playing for my country. The same country you chose and left the millions that were being given to you is the same country that looks at you today and says how stupid you are. Look at our athletes. How many people today you look at the World Athletics circles and you see Kip Keter, you see Kip Konyango, Kip Mwangi, Kip Kewanjiru, and you wonder, this Kip Kewanjiru is from Eldoret. And then you realize that these people chose to go and compete in other places where they felt more appreciated. And that speaks into several things. It speaks into we as a people. Do we hold our athletes, do we hold them as national heroes, especially for those who represent the national team? Do we hold with regard that national team badge in whichever sport you represent? Do we carry those athletes with that respect that they carried our national flag on their chests and fought for it, even if they lost? And then secondly, our federations have not played anything in helping our athletes in their wellness. Most of our federations today, you don't even know if they have a constitution or not. And we will not be afraid to say that there are federations in this country who's had the same president for more than 10 years. How do we improve the quality of our sports and expect the journalists to report well, yet there is a system that is supposed to support that artist that is not functioning the way it's supposed to function? If you look at the Sports Act, there we have beautiful laws. If we as a country can just follow what the Sports Act requires us to do as Kenya, I know we have an international audience here. Kenya implemented a specific act of parliament that is supposed to manage and help us run our sports. Very good sentiments, very good structures. But how many federations in Kenya today follows what the Sports Act has required us to follow? Because those are the things that help in wellness of the athletes. How many federations in Kenya today are focused on mental wellness of the athletes that are participating in those things? Then it's not enough to just say we organized a workshop. It is not enough for us to say that we have this. And you look at countries like Rwanda, who have embraced a certain culture. And I'm happy to hear that there is a Kenyan who is working as a clinician in a team. How many teams in Kenya now? I'm forced to ask myself, how many basketball teams in Kenya, other than Nairobi City Thunder, and institutional teams like KPA and maybe Equity and banks, that I can say, I've employed a clinician to work with the team, who can even sit with the players and talk about those vulnerable conversations. So before we get to the journalist and talk about how the journalist is reporting, we must also highlight the failure in the structure of our sporting ecosystem. It has not created an environment for our athletes to thrive. And it is not enough for us to expect the journalists to report positively in a system that does not treat the athlete positively. I've said many things. I hope I've answered your question in the process.
Yes, you have, Mike. And yes, I'm still really trying to get William to either give us his sentiments before we get to the tail end of this. This is the fourth roundtable by YIDP, and it's all about the narrative shield, where we were auditing how media frames the African champion. And this is all in an attempt to come up with a mind ball Africa concept that is supposed just to help on how we look at the athletes beyond the scoreboard or the win. And with us, I wanted just to again give some few sentiments or read on some of the feedback that you are receiving here. And we have Ruth Mnela. Ruth Mnela is from LVCT Health Kenya, Mombasa. Thank you, Ruth, for joining us. We have Roslyn Kabana, and she is a social worker, GBV, a child protection expert for private practices in Nairobi. Thank you, Rosalind, for joining in the conversation. We have Osimbo again, who is promoting mental wellness in communities in Kenya and is based in Nairobi. And finally, we have Gira Elisha. I hope I'm doing justice to the name. Yeah, the founder and executive director of the Psychological and Reflexology Reception Center, which is a non-profit, and they focus on mental health and psychosocial support in Malawi. So again, the conversation is spread across the board. We are having a panel and even delegates within us from across Africa, Sierra Leone, Malawi, Tanzania, Kenya, Rwanda. All of them are here just to help us shape this narrative as journalists. How can we ensure that we are also telling the human interest stories more than just looking at the scoreboard, which has been a kind of an issue in recent kind of reporting. And for us, we want to move from that sensationalization of the news and ensure we are adding more depth into our reporting, as Mike is putting it. William, if you're with us, maybe you can just, I know you are listening into the conversation, maybe point us on areas we've not touched on how you are doing it best in your platform and how you'd want to go about it as an individual journalist in ensuring we create a better ecosystem. William? I think William is still having an issue, and we are at the very tail end. We were supposed to finish in the next 13 or so minutes. So I really want to be true to that. And Mike, if you're still with me, what should define the African sports journalism by 2030? What should define the African sports journalism? How are you seeing this looking out in the next coming years?
So my response might be more political than sporty, and I hope this will not go wrong with some people. But it is we Africa, the biggest barrier in Africa sports development, because it's a chain. Before we get to the athletes' wellness, it's a whole ecosystem. The athlete is a small component within the ecosystem, and I'm sure, and I know I'm not deviating from the fact that today our focus was on the journalism and how it's centered around athletes and how it promotes athletes' wellness. But also, I want us to acknowledge the fact that it is not that is the end point of a system that begins elsewhere, because Africa hasn't invested in its own platforms. We have a very rich sporting ecosystem that is not run or controlled by Africa. Africa does not even collect its own data. And if you look at even the data companies that are working in Africa in some of those developed ecosystems, they are foreign. So when the world is talking about data and talking about large language models that are defining how AI is operating in other parts of the world, where is Africa? Are we participating in it? Or are we just watching and waiting that some savior from God knows which part of the world will come and rescue us and give us their AI models to just continue collecting our data and sharing in their ecosystems? We must rise as a people. Africa must rise and protect its own children in whichever sector of society. The biggest barrier in sports development is because that money that is in sports, the biggest money, if you look at the European clubs, especially in football, and you look at the America, and you look at NBA, you look at Europe, the biggest money in the sporting ecosystem is in media and broadcast. And that is where advertisers come in, that is where sponsorships come in. Have we invested in that ecosystem as a people to create that entertainment value and to create that broadcast value that can bring that revenue that eventually goes a long way to pay that athlete who is playing for that team? Because teams, for example, if you look at Kenya, most teams are not even, most of the people are not even earning anything substantial that can help them take care of their families. And you look at it and you ask yourself, how have we found ourselves in that space? Because we've not focused in that ecosystem that can be economically viable to promote sports as a business and not look at sports as a form of entertainment. So we must have that shift to look at sports as a business and as a cultural ecosystem that can bring people together for purposes of amplifying their voices, but also creating opportunities for employment. And you think about employment in the sporting ecosystem, you and I as journalists, the producers, the cameramen, the commentators, the digital content creators, the data analysts, like there is a larger job scale if a sporting ecosystem can work. And remember, the person who is at the center of that sporting ecosystem is who? Is that athlete. That athlete is the final beneficiary when this ecosystem is able to fund itself. It's able to generate enough revenue to be able to increase and promote their salaries. When you're talking about AI, the rest of the world is talking about AI. Why are we running away from AI? How many forums have you gone to and you've had AI being the main topic? We've had AI as the other topic. After we've spoken about all these things, especially politics. We like politics. After we've spoken about all these things, then AI comes there. The world has moved into AI. And it's high time we embraced it and figured out how we can compete in that AI ecosystem. AI is not going away anytime soon. So whether people are pro or against it, it is here to shift how people are doing things. And as a journalist, please take care, because there are certain jobs in the media and broadcast ecosystem that are already taken by AI. And if we are not participating in shaping how AI operates, especially in media and the sporting ecosystem, then we'll always play catch up in every sector that we are going to go to. So even as I conclude, my encouragement is that we are at a very good place. And the fact that we are having this conversation is the beginning of us introspecting and asking ourselves, what does the next 5 years look like? What our focus is going to be like? What are our platforms going to prioritize? Because that is what will create that cultural shift that will not only put money in the pockets of the journalist, but also create an ecosystem of self-growth and that communal nature that shapes who we are as Africa. Thank you.
Okay. Maybe just to finalize, William, I don't know if you are able to get on board on, again, just to insist on how we can use some of these platforms that we have to tell their wellness stories rather than just the sport. But I don't know what you can add on to this as we do our closing remarks. It seems we're still having an issue with William's sound. So today was not merely a conversation about journalism. It was a conversation about the stories that shape the next generation of African athletes and storytellers. If narratives can wound, they can also heal. If stories can create pressure, they can also create protection. The challenge before us is simple: to become architects of a narrative shield that can help in ensuring that the athlete's well-being is taken care of. So I want to thank my participants. And before I do so, I just want to maybe give a minute or so, Mike, a little bit on your background in the field, how people can get in touch with you. What are some of the things that you're working on right now that we can keep a close look into before we can hand it over to Colin for the closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Bonnie, and I really appreciate being invited here. I know I've spoken a lot. I hope it has made sense, but also I would have really loved to hear the sentiments of other people, perhaps what experiences other people are having wherever they are, and how do we journey together to shape what the future of sports it looks like in Kenya, because we keep talking about money. I think money has become a very prominent part of the conversation, but I don't think we've interrogated further the other underlying factors that come with that money. So for me, I think we've built our hope is to build an ecosystem that will promote as a particular type of storytelling. And we started slowly. We started with the available social media platforms. And now I think by the end of this week, hopefully by Monday, our website will be up. Actually is being constructed. We have tried to collect as much data on basketball. For those who are here, we've covered basketball extensively over the last 3 years. We've built a database that we hope can help scouts, can help people who want to interact with basketball as a sport to find one point of as a source of information. So you can check out basketball.ke, which is a heavily data driven website that we've created. We are trying to simplify it. So we've also built another website that will be up by Monday called bplussports.com. bplussports is basically a space we hope to bring now all these things together, because we realize that sports audiences are very, how do I say it? You'll find a rugby fan loves rugby alone. They sometimes they don't even care about football or hockey. A hockey fan loves hockey alone. A basketball fan loves basketball alone. It is a very small percentage of people like me who is in basketball and is in football and is in rugby, and you want to get to the depths of every sport. And we are trying to create a platform that now converges this. And this, I'm not saying I can see, Bonnie, you're shaking your head. I can say this authoritatively from a point of an experience we had. We started basketball, our page that was covering basketball only. When we started this year, when we started covering boxing and incorporated boxing on the same platform, a lot of people gave very negative feedback. And there are people actually who left. So we had to create a separate social media page. And if you go online, if you're looking for B Plus Sports, you'll find B Plus Sports Basketball, and you'll find B Plus Sports Boxing. That was heavily informed by the responses that we got from our audiences, that people wanted, the basketballers wanted to feel like this is our space. The boxing people also want to feel like this is our space. So that while that diversification is good for business, it stretches the talents extremely so much. But if that is what the audiences want, that is what we are working towards, and we hope that by the end of this year, we'll have built a very data-centric ecosystem that helps not only market sports, but can also now zero in on the athletes. There are a lot of athletes, and Bonnie is here, and he's a hockey player. If I ask him, beyond the photos on his phone, which other platform can we go to that we can find stories that can now single him out as a good hockey player with which he is? Very few, if not none. And that is what we are trying to create, that once we pick a sport, we are able to go inside that sport and we can spotlight the athletes. They can have an opportunity to share their own data And that is what we've already done with basketball. Now we've moved into rugby and boxing this year. And we'll keep expanding 1 or 2 sports every year until we do all the sports that we have around. But for now, we are happy to say that the sports media market is really opening up. And we hope the rest of us who are in this meeting today, who are on this forum today, you'll find a spot that you can build on, and we can share these ideas maybe in the next couple of weeks, if not months, if not years, to say, how can we continue coming together? How can we continue improving the lives of our athletes, but also our journalists? Journalists themselves also need those wellness trainings, as we talk about. I think journalism is also an extreme sport, because you have to wake up early, you have to go cover that story, you have to ensure it is edited, it has to make sense, it has to be on air in good time, and you have to wake up tomorrow again to go and cover the same thing. It is a routine that before you know it, it's 6 months, it's 1 year. You have 3 weeks to rest. In fact, most of the people even rest for just a week in December. And then you have to be back by 1st of January. We have to report again at the new year. So journalists themselves also are not exonerated from this conversation. And I feel like as we're talking about wellness of athletes and we're talking about mental health conversations, let us also factor in the journalists as part of the people who need to benefit from such trainings and such programs. Thank you. And thank you so much also for having me. I really feel honored to be able to talk here today. These are topics I'm very passionate about, and I'm happy that there are people around the world and around the continent and also in Kenya who really care about some of these topics. I'm open and I'm willing to partner and share my ideas whenever called upon. Thank you so much. And to every person also who asked a question, who've liked, who've shared their views and their ideas. Thank you so much also for your feedback. I really appreciate it. And I hope that this will not end here, but this will be a starter of a certain conversation that will conclude somewhere else. Let us join hands. I've designed a curriculum already. So Boniface and Collins and Tobias, you don't need to redesign. You can only speak into this one. Let us embrace it. Let us see how we can use it to support other sectors and other reporters who are already out there. Thank you so much, and God bless you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mike. Before I hand it over to Collins, I really loved how you finished it off. Just as well as athletes, the coaches, even the umpires, the journalists themselves also need to be looked into their well-being as this is going on. So another pointer for Collins to add on there. So to my panel, Mike, founder B+, thank you very much. We were to have Elijah Uko, a sport journalist from Nation Media.
I think your mic is off. Is it me who is not hearing you, or it?
So yes, I was just saying a big thank you to all the members who are present. I was giving a vote of thanks to the panel who I was to have. So I was starting off with you, Mike, the founder at B+. Elijah Uko also was a sport journalist, was to join us from Nation Media, but with the World Cup coming up, he had to also step out for that. William Njuguna, we only had a bit of you at the very beginning, but I know the insights we've shared leading to this mean a lot and would have also really helped with this conversation. So Collins, I'm hoping you could help us in having Elijah, William, and Mike on board for a follow-up conversation. Definitely, I want to thank Youth Initiative Development Program for always hosting such kind of conversation. And this was only to lead us to the mega event which is happening in November 2026, which is supposed to also be a youth sports and well-being summit. Something we are also calling on partners to come on board to ensure it can become much of a success. At this point, I want to hand over to Collins, the CEO of IDP, to give us our closing remarks. He might just also share more insight on the upcoming summit in November 2026. And I hope we can have more such conversations leading to that day. So thank you everyone who contributed to this. As I said, we had members from Sierra Leone, Rwanda, Malawi, Tanzania, and even Kenya contributing. Members who are here all through Charity Mwangi, Hilary Otieno, Jacqueline Curtis, Jane, Hassan, Dambiri, Osimbo, Leki, Ruth, Tobias, and also Stacy, who was our co-host, and definitely Collins also, who is the main host for this particular. And I want to thank everyone for listening to us. We've really tried to work within the 2 hours. I know we could have gone on with Mike, but again, a big thank you, and I hand over to Mike to tell us way forward as we prepare for the 5th virtual roundtable. Back to you, Collins.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Boniface. That was such an electrifying conversation. And I would like to thank Mike Muluke for such an elaborate and informative contribution because you've really shifted the conversation on how we perceive athletes' wellness, and also on how best we can involve the journalists and media houses as well as storytellers. Without wasting time, because I've seen our time has really gone, I would like to thank even the delegates for dialing in, and also the team behind our technical team who are ensuring that things are working well. I would like to invite you for our next session, which is gonna be on 5th of is it on 2nd of July? Yes, so we are now moving from theory to triad, whereby we look at the angle of how we can transform sports into a clinic by defining the proper referral pathways, and also coming up with the tools that will really tap into the data that even Mr. Mike has really tackled very well. Sorry for that. Okay, the next session is gonna be on 9th of July, and this will focus on the invisible player, majorly on the safeguarding to the girl child and para athlete in the African arena. So at this point, I would like to invite you, if you are interested to participate or partner with us in the upcoming summit, which already we have a huge number of companies, organizations which have shown interest working together with us in actualizing everything. There is a session that is just dedicated for journalism, and if you are a media house or somebody in journalism running a company in that sector, you can reach out to us, and maybe we discuss on how we can partner with you in that. So here is our contact. Kindly you can reach out to that. Send an email to partnership at wiredpk.org. So our partners for the event, I think our major partner right now, it's gonna be the UNESCO chair, that's under Kenyatta University, and we'll be able to share more information within the few days. Even the venue, it's gonna change. The venue, it's gonna be Kenyatta University. So we are welcoming you to be part of this, and also see how best we can work. If you need more information on the concept, it's on our website, which is summit.wiredpk.org. So, ladies and gentlemen, at this particular time, I don't have much to say, and I'm very sorry for consuming a bit of your time, but it was for the good. Allow me to wind up and also welcome you in our upcoming event, and welcoming you engaging with us even beyond the summit that we will have. So allow me to pray to close up. We didn't start with the word of prayer, but allow me to pray so that we can close for the day. Father, in the name of Jesus Christ, Lord, I thank you and I bless your name for this day. I bless you for such a wonderful discussion that we've just had. We thank you, Jehovah, for guest delegates that you have brought across globe. Whatever we've discussed here, may it not end here, but let us now take a step and be able to actualize and to be able to implement some of the major frameworks and ideas that have come out of this conversation. We thank you and we welcome you to guide us even as we partner to transform the sports sector by integrating wellness to the fullest to enable our young athletes to thrive. We thank you for our speakers and we thank you for our delegates. For the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, I pray. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Michezo ni furaha, mchezo ni dawa. Kimbia na ndoto zako, usichoke wala kuwa. Mwili wako ni gari, akili ni ramani. Safari ya maisha lazima iwe safi. Twende sasa, tusonge mbele. Nguvu zetu zishinde vikwazo. Fanya mabadiliko, leo ni siku yako. Jipe moyo, tembea kwa mwanga. Fanya mabadiliko, nguvu zako zinatosha. Pamoja tunaweza bila shaka. Mazoezi ni mbegu, afya ni mti. Ukikimbia na kucheza, mawingu yanafutika. Akili yako itulie kama maji ya ziwa.